Welcome to The Guardian, a podcast aimed to educate citizens about law enforcement practices. In today's episode, Chief Mark Ballard and Lee Upchurch talk about the importance of cameras and technology in public safety.
Today's subject is going to be covering cameras and embracing technology in public safety. And I couldn't think of a better host to have with us than Lee Upchurch, a friend and a coworker that has been with me for a long time. And Lee, tell our listeners a little bit about your background.
Sure, be more than happy to. So I started in law enforcement in '94. Worked the road. Worked just about any and every job you can think of throughout the years. I spent a great deal of my time, I think it was 7, 8, 9 years, I think, was spent in narcotics. So worked 7 of those 9 for a task force where we covered about 5 counties. So we stayed busy. That was during the meth war. So we were running from meth lab to meth lab a lot during that time. So after that, I got back on the road, worked there for a few more years, and I ended up back at Choctaw County Sheriff's Department as a chief deputy. So I worked over there as chief deputy for 12 years. We managed, of course, a department, jail, budget, all 9 yards. So massive headache. So my hat's off to you. Blew my back out, during that time, and I had surgery and went into the civilian role. And it's been a good place for me right now. Then you and I started talking about what you were wanting to do over here, and I was really impressed with the idea and the concept behind it because it was so new. You were on the leading edge of that, so you were on the front end of it of doing a real-time intelligence center or a crime center.
I tell everybody I copy well. Make no mistake about it. I'm not original in any way, and just saw those trends coming.
Sure.
To do it or to attempt to do it in Mississippi, no doubt. And a credit to a lot of agencies that were out there that were on it, that we benchmarked with, that we looked at. Some that didn't have it but had cameras and systems.
Right.
And to make clear, I always thought that you were a really good fit for 2 reasons. One, you mentioned not only narcotics investigations, but ladies and gentlemen, that is narcotics investigations in rural Mississippi. That is some extreme cutthroat type of stuff where everybody knows everybody. So to be able to get in those effective amphetamine investigations, that's not easy work. And those are very dangerous individuals. So you had to have street sense there. But secondly, you had administrative abilities. You understand the importance of taxpayer money. You understand the importance of resources and cost effectiveness. It's not like some individuals just think they have a blank check and go with it. So you understand the importance of budgeting and restrictions and priorities. So I really thought that you were a good fit for our initial startup of our real-time intelligence center here, what we call our Arctic Center. And yeah, it has been going around for some time. The bigger agencies, very impressed when we took tours at the credit to the FBI National Academy to make sure that you see these places and what we're doing. I think the biggest challenge here is for us to bring it back to the state of Mississippi and to be able to educate for people to be able to understand what it is we're trying to accomplish and really to disprove some wrong ideas that are out there and to talk about fact-based, science-based stuff that is going to lead us to being a more effective police department. For a lot of communities out there, if they haven't yet, there's somewhere a discussion going on as to how to embrace the most effective tools that are out there. And so when you talk about 21st century policing, you talk about embracing technology, right?
Right.
I can't think of a more effective tool than cameras for law enforcement. It was important in narcotics investigations back in the day, right?
It was extremely important.
Could you do a cell charge without being on camera?
No, wow. And the funny thing about that is cameras were new, somewhat. The technology was advancing, so...
We're talking way back, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. We're talking early 90s, all right?
Yeah. So at first, the courts, they just wanted the hand-to-hand transaction.
Right.
And then we were able to get, full body, transactions, a good face shot, ID. Well, that was good. They wanted that. And then the next thing, well, now we got audio in with this video capability now. So now we want audio and video.
To hear the voice.
That's right.
Hear the transaction.
So it went from simple, and it has never stopped since then. It's a continued build of how we do things in law enforcement. And I've seen it from the early stage, from carrying a Polaroid camera around to crime scenes. And now, I can pull my phone out and put it on the table. I can pull up over 400 and something cameras.
Yeah, that evolution of the industry.
That's
right?
amazing.
Yeah, no doubt it is. And if you're not embracing it, if you're not evolving, you're falling behind. Because every day we say this often, this industry is changing. And part of embracing technology in 21st century policing is very clear. Look at your environment, see if you're using the technology to work smarter, not harder. And if you're not doing that, again, you're falling behind. Some basic, I can't think of some fundamentals here. It's easier to prevent a crime than to react to it. The science behind cameras are very clear. People perform differently when they go into areas that they know that there's potential for identification if they have ill intent. Let me say that again. If they have ill intent in a public place, they have a tendency to avoid or change their behavior. Science shows that, right? And if you're concerned about public safety issues, understand that. It's easier to prevent a crime than to react to it. Understand second rule, there's no more effective tool out there for law enforcement than effective video camera.
That's right.
And multiple reasons that kind of transition into that. And lastly, I think for our viewers, they should understand how, and we'll touch on this a little bit deeper, how expensive violence is. And if you care about all the time taxpayer money, and we talked about that, your background and why that's important, when you start evaluating the cost of violence and what it means to your community and to the average taxpayer, it's appalling. And I don't think law enforcement's doing enough to have those discussions to understand violence is very, very expensive for a community. I'm not talking about just the emotional impact. Please don't think that I'm cold-hearted here. The emotional impact is devastating. No one wants to lose a loved one. And for those that have, our hearts will always go out for you, to you. The costs that are associated with that crime are very significant. And those are some fundamentals to remember. Again, to prevent a crime versus reacting to one is a lot easier. To understand there's no public safety tool out there more effective than the camera. And then lastly, that violence is extremely expensive. That's the formula as to how agencies and why this profession is kind of moving into the area where it's at. I will bring up a significant event that just occurred the last week with us. We received a 911 call where a kidnapping and a carjacking is a very serious event, right? Caller calls in, car had been carjacked, she'd been held at gunpoint, left an area. I'm not going to go into specifics for the pending on this, but that's a very serious call.
Sure, it was, and luckily I was at my desk when it happened, so I was able to jump on the Fusus, and we had cameras integrated into the system in the parking lot where this crime supposedly took place.
By the time the 911 call finished, right, we knew
she wasn't in the parking lot.
There was a problem here,
Yeah.
Right? There was a problem. She gave identification. She gave all this accolades on suspect description. When I go back and I think about traditional policing models without the cameras, I can't stress enough. If you care about fairness and a justice system, you better care about cameras, because the more serious, let's say that you're at an intersection. Everybody has a fear of this. When you drive through a traffic intersection and you're involved in a wreck, maybe your children are involved in a wreck. One, there's instant anxiety because you're concerned, especially if you're not at fault, will the individual remain on scene? Two, is the individual going to be truthful? In today's society, that's hit or miss, right?
That's right.
Especially if they're at fault. A camera there takes that away. Doesn't matter what the individual says. If we can identify the car, we can identify the individual, and the camera shows clearly what the facts are. So again,
it does, and the officer's getting that information before he even gets on scene.
Right.
He's getting either a video clip of it, or he's getting a still shot of the actual incident or the wreck, and he's looking at it whenever he pulls up on scene, he's making contact and he's pulling up the system and he's looking at the video
of what transpired. That's where this is going. That's why that's so effective. Ladies and gentlemen, think for a minute the costs that are associated with an overtime, with multiple personnel. When you have any police executive will tell you, if you have the accusations of a carjacking, kidnapping in your area of operation, in your jurisdiction, you're going to, quote, throw the kitchen sink at it, right? And we were prepared to. But the effectiveness of the camera, automatically, just by those businesses choosing to be a part of the system, saved money, saved time, potentially saved an individual, let's say, that in other jurisdictions where there might be less standards, might have been, interviewed or detained or arrested, right? So these are things that people need to think about when you're talking about the discussions of the importance of cameras. I think that you mentioned earlier the evolution of voices versus just having the silent shots investigations.
That's right.
Today, police officers know if it's not on camera for a body camera, courts don't like it, juries don't like it. If you are involved in a crime, the higher level crime that you're dealing with a criminal, the more likely a criminal is going to lie. Criminals lie. Defense attorneys defend criminals. Cameras tell what happened. And you're not relying upon a witness. The problems with witnesses are they're emotional. Some of them can be biased. I mean, any attorney can put that out. You're dealing with human entities that are under adrenaline that might have problems with memories. Most sides will kind of come in there and attack that. They'll pull off, for example, you're wearing eyeglasses right now. They'll pull off the glasses and ask about their identity. How far they can see. They'll play all the tricks of the trade. And a camera doesn't have those issues. A camera allows the jury to see what the camera sees in an unbiased fashion to be able to show that the crime occurred.
We're in a college town, so there's no alcohol involved in the camera.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and you bring up an important point. If you're talking after hours in a lot of communities throughout, especially in their entertainment districts, chances are the people that are close to the time are going to have been drinking or under the influence of another type of narcotic or something, and that impacts your ability to present cases. Witnesses also have a tendency in the criminal justice system. Some of them are extremely delayed, and during that time, witnesses will move. You have to locate them. They feel pressured. Sometimes they'll change their stories. This is nothing new. This is not a new concept. I think in the 1930s, people really struggled on taking on, the mafia, how they changed their stories. Witnesses are very hard. Cameras are hard to intimidate. When you have it, you have it.
And you don't have to find them. They're there always. They're always right there on that spot doing what they're designed to do. It's no different than whenever you walk into Walmart or you walk into Kroger to go buy a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk. There are no telling how many cameras you walk by whenever you go in there to get that gallon of milk and that loaf of bread.
Right.
It does the same thing as what we're doing here. They're fixed cameras. They're not going anywhere. You don't have to track them down. You don't have to wait for them to sober up. You don't have to rely on them that they're actually telling you the truth in that statement.
They don't get the flu.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
they do have operational. I mean, we do have cameras come up and down, but for the most part, when they're on, they're on.
They're on, and it's instant, and you're able to get that information right there on the spot. And, what we see in the Arctic is, back during investigation, if you're doing an investigation on a shooting or even an auto burglary or anything, just canvassing the area to try to find those cameras at those residents or trying to find the manager from the quick stop that can actually download the video, you're 1, maybe 2 days out on just getting your video.
Right.
Now it's instant. I mean, we're able to get that information instantly and able to push it out to the officers.
Speed is the key, and I'll jump ahead a little bit on some of our notes that we had here to go back on speed being the key and cost effectiveness. If you can quickly, for example, use the false kidnapping call, we also had a legitimate kidnapping call, and the camera showed differently. Ladies and gentlemen, you would think that if an officer responded to a kidnapping call where a woman was dragged across a parking lot, beaten, thrown into a vehicle, and left, that one, you would have, the expectations are you would have multiple 911 calls. And secondly, that upon interviewed with individuals that witnessed it, that they would at least articulate what happened. We had an event a while back. Again, I won't go to the specifics. That was just that set of circumstances. An individual had been involved in a domestic relationship, vacated, bailed out of the vehicle, was drugged back in by her ex-boyfriend, beaten in the parking lot, thrown into the car, and left. We had one 911 call out of all those people. How did we know we had all those people? We had a camera.
Got the camera.
Officers showed up. An employee said, quote, they're just playing.
Yeah.
They were just playing. If you were doing back in traditional policing models without those cameras being involved in your system, that is a victim to violent crime. And fortunately, our investigative team were able to develop enough information, rescue that individual, and correctly hold an individual accountable. And again, that is a camera that made that. Not witness, not human entities. Thank goodness someone decided to call. But if we were lined up on the human factors that were there, we would have been deeply disappointed in violence. She probably would have been killed.
Sure. And, you cannot help, especially older officers like us. All the calls that we've been on in the past before you really had this overwhelming, camera movement that we're in now, a lot of places didn't have cameras.
Right.
They may have one at the register inside, but that was it.
Yeah.
So how many calls do you think that we've been on, situations similar to that, and it was actually something to it, but all the witnesses played it off as they were just picking?
Yeah. No telling. And today people don't want to get involved.
That's right.
Right. And there's a hesitancy there, and I don't understand why it is. Maybe the delay in some of the criminal justice cases that we see and how long it takes for the system to work its way through. But a lot of people don't want to get involved. The camera doesn't care if it's involved or not. And that is important. But despite it being a very effective public safety tool, the number one headwinds we run in against is citizens' trust. And this is where Hollywood is killing us. This is where a lot of misinformation is out there, and this is at the heart of the reasons why we do a podcast. So talk to me about, one of your discussions is discussions with business owners, residential, and trying to do the registry, things like that. How do you reinforce citizens' trust?
And I hate to say it like this, but we are in the South, and most people don't want government involved in anything. They're worried about their constitutional rights. They're worried about everything else. Education is the main thing. We've got to educate on our end to the businesses, to the business owners, to the homeowners that want to register their cameras. What specifically we're utilizing this stuff for. Look, I get asked all the time, what do you do, man? I mean, what do you do all day? Do you sit in there and watch cameras? No, I don't sit in there and watch cameras all day. It's incident-based, is what we're doing. So it's not like we're sitting around watching the intersection of Highway 12 in South Montgomery just because I don't have anything else to do.
All right.
But, people actually believe that we sit here and watch cameras all day long. But after I speak with them and educate them that it's incident-based. So if we have an officer on a traffic stop at 12 in Montgomery, I'm going to pop over on the camera, make sure that he's okay. A lot of things can happen on a traffic stop. You know that. I know that. We've been there. It can go from a good stop to a deadly stop real quick. So it's just another set of eyes on that officer to ensure that his safety and everything is met. It's just another set of eyes. It's just like another officer being on the corner watching. The only difference is I got access to all these other cameras in case something does happen and the suspect does flee the scene, or the officer is injured or hurt or something and he can't call out for help. I can get an ambulance en route. I can get more help en route. Anything from a traffic stop, and then we can go over to auto burglaries. We're a college town. I think every college town across the United States gets hit with them. It's open season for our college students. we're tracking people on foot that are breaking into vehicles. That's what we do with them. And once I explain that, especially to the business owners, they're all on board with it. They understand it. It's the ones that
Most.
Sure, most. And you can tell the difference to the ones that want to know, and the ones that
aren't interested.
Because the ones that want to know will come up here, sit down, and I'll explain the system to them and talk to them. And the ones that don't want to know are the ones that walk in, look up, and say, "No, I don't need to see nothing else," and walk out.
Yeah. Well, and to address, let me say, no one considers protection of the Constitution more importantly than your military personnel and your law enforcement personnel. Why, ladies and gentlemen, we swear an oath to protect it. It's part of our swearing-in procedure. If you haven't heard it, listen to it. We have to swear an oath in protection of the Constitution. And make no mistake about it, law enforcement pays that sacrifice more so than what people think. And on an annual basis, we pay for it with blood. Men and women sacrifice their lives in protection of that Constitution. So when I hear things like, protection of this, protection of that against law enforcement, it's offensive. Law enforcement's job is to protect that Constitution and it's not always easy to do. We have a Constitution that was written by revolutionaries who hated government.
That's right.
Yeah. So
surprise.
Yeah, and when you go to the National Academy and you deal with 30 or 40 internationals from other nations and how they police and they listen to what we have and what we deal with, they're blown away. But we believe if you can do it with this and you can do it within the restraints of the Constitution, it makes you so much more of an effective quality law enforcement officer, and we take pride in that. So, I think that everything that we talk about has to be done in a manner of within the Constitution. Public cameras there's no expectation of privacy in public. That's what we're talking about here, effective location of public cameras. And one of the ways that you address the issue correctly, and I think anyone with concerns, I totally understand that, concerns about Big Brother, that's where you have to have effective policies, auditing protocol. Again, I advocate all the time. We're a nationally accredited police force. That means what we put in policy, we have to show in practice. And CALEA is an answer for those agencies for an accreditation type of law enforcement services. If you have those policies in place, you ensure that you don't have an abuse. You ensure that you have self-analytics to ensure that ethics and integrity marks are there. And you have things in place if an individual violates that you deal with it very quickly.
Right. I'm gonna jump back to the registry, and then I'm gonna come forward back to the policy and the auditing and all that.
Sure.
So, with the Big Brother comment, we're also with Fusus, you have the camera registry. So what that means is homeowners, you, your wife, your in-laws, whoever, if you can go online at Connect Starkville, starkvilleconnect.org, and you can register that you have cameras. And the only thing that's doing is it takes less than a minute. You put your name in there, your email address, your physical address, how many cameras you have, and a phone number. And that's it. What it does with us, it creates a network of registered cameras across Starkville. Now, what that allows us to do with Fusus is that we can go in there and circle an entire neighborhood. Imagine how many times you've walked through a neighborhood looking to see who has cameras.
Door-to-door video canvassing. Okay. Labor intensive.
That's right.
Yes.
And hours.
Days.
Days. People working nights, people working days, people going out of town. Well, now I can circle that entire neighborhood and request cameras from over 50 different homeowners in a matter of seconds.
You can tell them, hey, if in this camera registry, I say this all the time, if you care about your loved one's safety, you care about your neighborhood safety.
Sure.
You care about your neighbors. Fusus is Greek for intertwined, am I correct in that? It is built upon a modern-day community policing concept, the camera registry. We can't see your cameras. It's nothing more than a list that we can post information to you to check your cameras. Let's say it's a navy blue SUV involved in a armed robbery or involved in a residential burglary.
That's right.
If your neighbor's getting hit down the street, there's a high probability you will at one time or another. You want to be able to help your neighbors. And by pushing that information out, every citizen just about that I know has a camera walking in their cell phone. They also have email access. It is a way to push out information immediately, get the return back check on the systems extremely quick. And nothing was more important, probably the most high-profile crime I could think of late, and there's been a lot of them through the years, but the most recent high-profile crime I could think of is the students that were murdered in Moscow, Idaho, right?
That's right.
Video canvassing was extremely labor-intensive, and when you're knocking on doors and checking, the reality is when you're knocking on doors and trying to time it when people are going to work, going to school, going to whenever, the data on those security systems, the clock is ticking. When you've had a major crime to occur, that the systems generally are built that they're going to reboot their history. We talked about that with security solutions and others. You're against the clock when that is rolling. So to be able to get to those individuals, ask them, check the systems before the systems reboot is extreme pressure. And again, the speed in which we can do this just simply by registering the camera and helping out public safety. If you're tired and frustrated at looking at the violence on the news every night, do something about it.
That's right.
Invest in a camera and in technology. Sergeant Lovelady, he's our public information officer. He helped me just the other day enhance my systems and add to them by, it was $35, $40 cameras that added into the system, right. SIM cards. It wasn't much. The technology is there. But just in a little bit of additives here and there to help with your security systems. Our job is to educate and to make individuals to become harder to become a victim.
That's
right?
So let me say this clearly. We cannot see your cameras at home.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. It seems like it doesn't matter how much we educate with that. We still have people on the back row saying, I don't want you looking at my cameras.
Big brother.
Yeah, we cannot look at your home cameras. The registry is simply, tell us you have cameras. Tell us you have cameras in your neighborhood. And if something happens to your neighbor or down the road,
we'll get you involved.
We're going to get you involved.
Yeah.
Let's solve it together. To John now, I guess that's pretty much it on that. We can go to the auditor.
I would like to add one more part. I would like to add that in communities that care, when you, it doesn't matter where your community is located, in communities that care and know each other, it's very hard for violence to erupt and not to be held accountable. Violence might take place, but communities that care, that know each other, looking after each other, it's hard for violence to succeed. And if you've got, if you care in your neighborhood and you care about others, invest in the technology. Sure. It's the same as a smoke detector. You care about, you don't want to be awakened in the night by a fire. Put out a camera. Be able to embrace the technology that is there. That's an important point that I bring up all the time. I didn't want to miss this opportunity for it, so I'll spin it back over to you.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I mean, I live out. Well, we both live out in the middle of nowhere. Really, we have a community and neighborhood. But I tell you what, in Morgantown, if something happens in Morgantown, I'm getting a text through the church app. I'm getting a text from my in-laws. I'm getting a text from the buddies group, text group I'm in. Everybody is talking about the crime that has happened or a vehicle or something that's going on that's suspicious in the area. I know if it happens in my neighborhood that's rural, it's happening in the inner city neighborhoods also.
Sure.
So just network all the cameras together. Let us jump in there and contact you if something happens.
Yeah, and
it's that easy.
And this is another important point that we wanted to bring up. Nothing can replace an effective police officer, right? We're talking about, if you had to use analogies, you give a lumberjack an axe, right? That's an old way of cutting down a tree. When you talk about a more effective public safety tool that's faster, you give a lumberjack a chainsaw. Now he's cutting multiple trees.
That's right.
He's much more. He's faster, he's efficient. This is what cameras do for law enforcement. There's never going to be a substitute for an officer on the street, an effective officer that has that social interaction, that's able to provide that follow-up to be an educator. But the cameras are an effective public safety tool, not a substitute, but a very effective public safety tool, and one that the more that we can educate, the more we can get people on board, the harder it is for crime to succeed. We understand what we're doing. I've been doing this my whole life. You have as well. And I think that's important to know. If you listen to the public safety officials, this is where the industry's going. It's going to go into embracing technology from cell phones to drones to counter drones to cameras. And the reason why is because violence is very, very costly and devastating to a community. And right now, relying on, people to use their own values just isn't working. So we have to embrace the technology to get there. So anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you hit it right there. You've got to embrace it, because it's like I tell the officers here whenever they come in and we start doing the Fusus training. Learn it now, because we're about, we will see drones implemented into it. We will see robotics implemented into it, and all other types of software that's going to be implemented into it. So if you learn it now, it would have been best to learn it back when we were like 100 cameras in the system. But just being able to, the big thing is for new officers is know where your cameras are located.
Yeah.
In case something happens, know where they're at. You don't have to call me in the middle of the night asking me if we have a camera at such and such intersection. Know where the cameras are located. You've got to learn it now. You got to be on the front line. Look, if you and I can figure it out, I think anybody that we have here can figure it out.
No doubt. We're probably the most non-tech people out there.
I am so non-tech, it's not even funny. I didn't even think this was going to work when we started this.
Sure.
But yeah, I think we did. But no, I think I'm good with that. You mentioned auditing earlier. Can you kind of retouch on that, and we'll jump back into that?
Yeah. So with, again, effective policies, when you talk about trust within law enforcement, you have to have a system in place. And so through effective policies and auditing, we can check who's been on the system, what they looked at, and what they're doing. So it's very hard, and that's audited often. I know that you do it several times during the week.
Sure.
And it has to be case related. Again, the concept that we're, watching who's cutting the grass or something like that, it's just a fallacy.
That's right.
We roll. We're working extremely hard, and it takes multiple cameras, multiple hours upon just one investigation. And so
days.
Yeah, and when you took an average, we're coming off Super Bulldog weekend where we had 475 calls for service. In a 72-hour period, we're busy. But the auditing is a really important part of effective policy. You need systems like Fusus that provides the auditing because you have to be able to meet citizens' trust. No relationship is effective if you cannot trust each other. And so we take trust very serious as a law enforcement agency. We cannot do it without the citizens. We value those concerns, and we're telling you we implemented things in place that will be able to ensure that the trust is there, that the integrity is there to be able to operate the system. So with that being said, we will wrap up this discussion on the Guardian, and we'll probably look forward to having multiple different discussions concerning different venues of the Real-Time Intelligence Center, what Fusus has done for us, and look forward to questions and comments at the closure of the podcast. Thank you for joining.